Before we begin this podcast, if you or someone you know is in crisis or needs emotional support, there are tools that can help. You can call Talk Suicide Canada at 1-833-456-4566, or you can text 45645. Coming in the fall of 2023 in Canada, you can also call 988, just three numbers. You can also call the Kids Help Phone at 1-800-668-6868. And the Trans Lifeline in Canada is 1-877-330-6366. In the United States, 1-877-565-8860, or call 911. You are not alone, and you do not need to be alone. Welcome to the We Are the ADHD Family podcast. This podcast is meant to chronicle our family's journey with ADHD, autism, and other discoveries along the way. I reach out to advocates, experts, individuals, and other families that want to raise their voices and empower those on their journey. My name is Mark Smeets, and I am passionate about removing barriers for others through creating connections, building on strengths, and practical problem solving. I am married to Siobhan, a father to two wonderful kids, and all of us have ADHD. We want you to feel like you have power and hope. I would like to honor and recognize the traditional and unceded territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo nations, on whose territories I live, work, and play. Given the system that we've got, simplify the system. What would you do?
I would base services.
What would you change? What would you change from getting rid of paperwork to whatever?
I think every family that's struggling, and I don't care why they're struggling, deserves an advocate alongside them. Somebody that's not necessarily in the system, but knows the system, right? Like, how much did you struggle with like paperwork and just trying to get appointments and trying to like rearrange your life around stuff to try to get stuff done, and you're tired and you still have this other life and you have another child, you have a wife, you have a job, and you don't always have a lot of time and energy, or you need somebody to keep steering you down the path and just reminding you, did you get this paperwork done? Can I help with it somehow? I think every family deserves an advocate to work alongside them. And I don't actually care why they're struggling. I never care the whys. I never care about the whys. Are you struggling? We should help. I think the same thing about food security. Are you hungry? I don't care why. We should help. I think that about most things in society. We need to stop judging people.
Yeah.
Right? We need to stop judging people. So I think everybody deserves an advocate. I think there should be way less paperwork. There's way too much paperwork, way too much justifications, way too many specialists that you have to see to get any sort of
judgment. Way too much judgment.
Oh, exactly. So much judgment.
What you just said. Yep.
So somebody that can help you fight the fight, right? Somebody that can be that person there for you to just, and sometimes just tell you it's okay, right? It's okay. What's going on? It's okay. Yes, he had a meltdown at school and busted up a bunch of stuff. It is what it is, right?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, so I think that's a good start. I think we have to stop putting so much emphasis on diagnosis. Right? I think we need to look at struggling children or adults, as the case may be, and go, okay, these are some things that we could put in place to make this easier for them. And we should do them, not because they have a diagnosis, because they're a living, breathing human being and they deserve that respect. Right? I think only people with common sense should be allowed to work in the system. Only people with common sense. That should be like some sort of designation, I think. Right? Like, put some letter, person with common sense. That should be the thing. PWSC, note CS. And that should be like some sort of designation that you can only do this work if you have some common sense.
And I think there's, I mean, both of us, we chuckle at that, but I think what happens with that common sense or that lack thereof, the because there's the one side of me that agrees with you. The other side of me says, because of the way that the system is, that the rules are not public rules and not everybody knows what the rules to the game are, common sense isn't common. And
yeah,
it's such a struggle to have people on the same page to say, again, I was thinking about Owen, trying to get the iPad for school, and well, what's that process look like? Well, they have to apply to the district to do this, to do that.
yeah.
I'm like, okay, what can I do? Oh, there's nothing you can do. How long does it take? Oh, it's like might take a couple months. Like, what? Seriously?
Yeah.
It just depends on the person who's doing that, pushing it through. And bless the people that he's been lucky to work with. I'm very happy and very grateful for that. But the rules of the game aren't known to everyone, and that's a big problem. Where do you think people can apply pressure for change?
So that's I think we need to apply pressure at the bottom, like going into the school system, on our local government, like our MLAs. And then I think we need to also put pressure at the very top, because people are not represented like in Parliament. People are not like, you don't hear this kind of stuff discussed in the Legislative Assembly. Like, it's just not on anybody's mind. They're like, oh, that's the school's problem, or that's the whatever. Like, it's always somebody else's problem. The people at the bottom that you need to win over, they don't have the power. Like, it's great. I do win people over all the time to my way of thinking, or people already think like I think. I know teachers that think exactly like I think, but their hands are tied to a certain extent, right? And they're also overwhelmed and overworked, and there's not enough EAs, right? And there's not enough adaptive equipment, which there is no excuse for that. There is no excuse for it with the technology that is available today. There is no excuse for not having that technology in schools.
Yeah.
There just isn't. Yeah. But it's not in anybody's budget. You have to fight for it, and then they
or a family's budget for that matter. I was talking with a technologist last week, and he was saying about he brought, because his kids were dyslexic as well, and they I can't remember what the other thing he said was, but he's like, yeah, we just bought them an iPad. And I'm going, the iPad that we've had for a bunch of years and has, that is still working and was run over by a car and still works. It had a really good case on it. And so it's just slightly bent like this, but that's okay. But not people, we can't, families can afford those things. But, that's the privileged ableist sort of best case scenario. If you can afford it, hey, fantastic. But do you want to go into debt over it? But that's the choice I think is happening with a lot of these tools. Because again, if we're not normalizing using a tool, and we're still calling it the accommodation, and we're still, making it seem like we're doing you a favor.
Yeah.
How does that, it doesn't help anybody. It just doesn't.
It doesn't. And there's so many nitpicky rules. Like, if you want to use your autism funding to buy a laptop, you need to word it a very specific way. Because if they think your child is going to use it for schoolwork, they will not okay that purchase.
They should be happy they're using it for schoolwork.
Oh, no, that's the school's job to buy them laptops.
To
use for schoolwork, which we know the schools do not have budgets for that, right?
Yeah,
The schools
yeah.
do not have
And
budgets for that.
neither does a family. And you know what? It should be about providing that tool, plain and simple, end of sentence.
Yeah,
It's it, right?
there is,
It
and
shouldn't matter where it comes from. So
no,
everybody get out of the sandbox, stop throwing sand at each other, grow up
yeah,
and figure it out. And like this should not, it is not rocket science. It should not be rocket science to sit there and figure out a process that works. And hey, if the kid's going to use it for school, oh my God, for God forbid the kid gets smart.
yeah, yeah. I know
Oh,
it's that, and that's one of the reasons why people need advocates, right? Is
yeah,
because
yeah.
when you're filling out those forms, man, if you do that wrong, right? Like my funding with the parent that made the error should be straightened out this week, but there's no guarantee, right? There's
Yeah.
no guarantee. I may have to go back at Autism BC several times to get it straightened out.
Yeah. What? So okay, I'm curious to know, what power do you think the public has? And I know there's voting, right? And
Yeah,
I'm a huge advocate. Please get the vote out, vote.
yeah.
I think it's massively important, talking to your MLA as well, or MP, or your school trustee. But what other power do you think the public has?
I think,
And tools at their disposal. What other, and
yeah,
not, how to apply that power with a certain tool.
yeah. So I think it really needs to be when that people need to realize, even if their kids are not neurodivergent, that it serves everybody better
Yeah.
if the school system works better. And I actually have some controversial views on this actually within the thing. So I love integrated classrooms, and I think it does do a lot of things that it was supposed to do. And I think in a lot of ways, it also does a huge disservice to the kids that we work with.
You mean integration classrooms as in mixed grades, like split grades?
Well, no, in putting all kids together. So,
Okay.
and I have an explanation behind this. So, they did like a pilot project several years ago in Delta, where they took a bunch of people that had graduated from high school, had graduated, been pushed through the system in integrated classrooms. So they had gone through regular school. They had not got their dogwood, right? That was never the goal. None of them could read or write or do math by the time they got out of school. None of them could do that. They put them in a pilot project in Delta where they were with a group of what they considered their peers. Within that year, all of them learned to read and write and do math. So, because they had been pushed through school and the only goal was to keep them within their grade level and in a regular classroom, one of the most powerful things to me was, they were so happy being with their peer. Everybody was happy being with what they considered their peer group. And one of the young men said, I was always the stupidest person in the room. So he did not consider any of the people in his classrooms his peers because he was always the stupidest person in the room. So we did him no favors. And I think lots of people belong in the classrooms. And I think some people belong in a classroom where they can actually learn the skills that they need. Like that was and they discontinued that program, by the way, and did not let it change how they view the school system at all. And yet that was such a powerful thing. Like when I watched the interview on that, I was like, oh, what are we doing? It proved that they could have learned that all along. They could have learned that all along. But that is not what the goal was for them. The goal was to push them through.
It reminds me of two things. Yeah, see if I can remember the second one in a minute. But it reminds me of, like, I remember hearing this when I was graduating high school, where you'd have someone that would tell you, um, I mean, I heard all my life, what do you want to be when you grow up? I have
Yeah.
no idea. I'm
Yeah.
47. I still have no idea.
I know.
But when, back in 94, when I graduated, the question that I began to hear shortly after was, what's the problem that you want to solve? And that was a way different, radical, experience of being like, oh, I don't have to be a plumber, or I don't have to be a this, or I don't have to be a that. I
Yeah.
can work toward, I can be more than one thing. Um, which I think is a huge thing. The other thing I think it does, and I don't think this is as controversial as you make it out to be, but this goes exactly into how you're learning. And again, if I have if I've got a wood block, if I've got a pen and paper, if I've got an iPad, if I've got speech to text, if I've got a physical picture of a horse, right? If we're working on spelling the word horse, who's to say that somebody learns best in a classroom versus being out in the field
Yeah.
amongst their peers learning something? Like,
Yeah.
if it makes sense, perfect sense. How do you square? I'm curious on this one. How do you square away with meeting people that in other political parties that have an agenda to tear things down that help so many people, build them up?
Hmm. The I have to say, in the sort of in the sphere I run in, I don't run into tons of people like that, or not
Mm.
tons of people that would voice that to me, because I think they know that I'm gonna I'm gonna have something to say about that.
Yeah.
Um, but um, because it's always about money. It's always about money. And then I
Mm.
ask them then, if, like, how much money do you think we're actually spending on this compared to how much money we spend on corporate welfare,
Mm.
which is in the
Yeah.
billions,
Yeah.
right? So because people talk even about, like, people that are on social assistance, whatever, that can only work part-time, and how much money they're costing the system. It's a pittance. And if you look at the statistics
It is.
compared to what
Yeah.
we spend on corporate welfare, like,
Yeah.
I'm more interested in what you're going to do about corporate welfare than I am about um, us spending less money on actual people. And then I always, because especially when it's politicians or people that think like that, they don't think of people as individual people. They've grouped them together and given them a name,
Mm.
right? They've grouped them together and they call them by whatever name, disabled, whatever name they've chosen. And then they
Yeah.
grew them. They don't look at them as people. They're not people anymore to them, right? They're not actual living, breathing people. They've grouped them together and then just made them a problem. It's just a problem for them, a problem to solve. And everything is always about money. It's always about money.
This has been one of the funnest conversations I've had in a very long time. Let's go to the fun section.
Okay, let's do the fun section.
What is one thing that people don't know about you?
I used to be a forest firefighter.
Oh,
Yeah, I was a forest firefighter in my early 20s, before I
wow.
had kids. I went out and got my industrial first aid ticket, and then went and fought forest fires. Um, it's a lot of fun. You get to ride in a lot of helicopters. It is very physical, but you get to ride in a lot of helicopters. I was one of the year that I did it. It was or the couple years I did it. They were both very bad fire seasons, and I was one of 6 women on the fire lines out of several hundred
Cool.
firefighters.
Wow.
It's still overwhelmingly male. There
Yeah.
are more female firefighters now than there were. I also never had one issue. Well, okay, so the very first time I stepped onto a fire line, some old guy made some rude comment about me being there. And one of the young firefighters turned around and told him, I would be careful what you say. She might be saving your life one day. Because I was the first aid attendant. But I did actually fight fires as well. But yeah, that was like, and then every now and then, like a couple of years ago, they had a bad fire season, and I still have an active firefighting ticket. And I was like, I'd probably die. I had to convince myself not to say, hey, yeah, I'll go fight fires.
Yeah. What year was that?
So let's see. It was before Kayla was born. She was born in 90, 89, probably 87, 88.
Oh, wow.
So I was young.
And
I was young.
you know what? It's interesting because with my background, I mean, I really became aware of just kind of the forest fires when I started at my first logistics job, and I saw a lot of the ones that went through. I was thinking Crow's Nest Past. That would have been was it 2000? 2004, something like that, where, I mean, climate change is real, without question. But seeing the seeing those forest fires progress as they have through the decades, is certainly scary. And I wasn't aware of it back then at that age. I would have been far too young to sit there and truly understand what it was. And you know what? I should add. The one thing I didn't tell you is that you can turn the question on myself as well. What's your favorite day of the week?
I have two favorite days of the week. Mondays and Fridays are my favorite days, specifically right now because I get to play Minecraft with the kids. Those make it. And any day I work one-on-one with one of my kiddos is always my favorite day. I love what I do so much. I mean, my other job I love too, but working with the kids really, they are like points of light and joy in my day, every time I work with them. And it doesn't matter, like they can come to the table as angry or as upset or as whatever that they are. They're always points of light and joy for me.
I can see that in the short time that we've gotten to know each other. I see that come across so clearly. And it's always fun to sit there and talk and stuff and do that. But yeah, the enthusiasm that you bring for it, it's very similar to my own too. What is okay? There's a words and phrases to react to. So I'll give you two positive and two negative, and I'm not going to say what's what. And I just want you to come up with the first thing that comes across your mind. Now, the full disclosure for anybody listening is that Pat's already had the list, but she doesn't know what I'm going to ask her. So the first one, superpower.
Oof. I think all my kids I treat them all like they have superpowers. They really do have superpowers to me. There's something in every single one of them that is like so outstanding. One of the favorite, see, and now I'm off on the rabbit trail, but one of my favorite parts of my job is to tell parents how much I love working with their kids. Right. And these are the things I say, and I always hit on what I consider their superpowers are. Like, they're so brutally honest. That's a superpower to me because not very many people are actually like that. Right. They're so kind. They're so whatever it is. Right. Like, and all of them have different things that are superpowers. And we as a society generally don't acknowledge or celebrate those things.
Ooh, a dark, low-level lit room.
That is calm for me. Like, I am generally, I I tell people all the time, I'm an extroverted extrovert, right? Like my passion is being out with people, even just like on my everyday life. But there are days that I need to snuggle up in the cave and just recharge, right? And it's calm for me. It's calming. And I don't want to do that all the time. Like there's definitely days where I need that. But mostly I get my energy from being out with people.
Yeah. I'm conversations like this for me, that's where my energy will come in. But I know I need to recharge, and I know I need, that space to be away from things, or it's not even a case of getting sleep. It's sometimes I just do need to be away.
Yeah.
Because I will go way overboard. Um, Next one, resilient.
Whew, I have so much to say about that. Hands down, I hate that word. I hate it. I hate the context that we use it in. We don't use it in, hey, we're going to work on these things to build resilience in our children. We use it in, hey, we're going to do this crappy thing, or we're not going to put this service in place, or we're not going to do this. We're not going to give them this tool that would be so helpful, because children
they're resilient. They'll be fine.
They'll be fine. Children are resilient. And they do the same thing about just even stuff in everyday kids' lives, about like when parents divorce and stuff is not going well, when school is not going well in general for whatever reason. They go, oh, kids will be okay. They're resilient. That should not be the goal ever. The goal should be to have them thrive. What can we put in place so kids can thrive? Right? And anything to do with resilience should be, what can we put in place to help kids have more resilience? So when things go wrong, they have the tools to use, not that they just have to, on their own, find resilience.
Last one, words matter.
Oh, words matter. They matter so much. I try to be so careful with the words that I use when I'm talking to parents, when I'm talking to kids, when I'm talking to educators. There are some words like accommodations. We've talked about this one. I do not like that word. It has such negative connotations. Like you said, I'm doing you this favor.
Yeah.
No, thank you. How about we put these tools in place so this child can succeed? Right? And it's about a lot of words that we use and a lot of negative connotations. We hardly ever talk positively about kids when they're struggling. Nobody ever picks out the, hey, this is the great thing that happened. It's always, this is the terrible thing that happened. It's not like, so I had a child once that poked holes in the ceiling tiles with a broom handle. And everybody was just like, there's consequences, there should be punishment, there should be whatever. And I was like, or how great was it when those boys were teasing him, and instead of hitting them with the broom, he poked holes in the ceiling? I would much rather that go on. And yes, we need to help put more skills in place. That was not a great choice, but the only consequence I wanted to see was him help fix the holes in the ceiling. And nobody talked about the boys that were teasing him. Nobody talked about that.
Of course not, because there's holes in the ceiling. Oh, wait, what is that? We can just repair it? Oh, really?
Right?
Oh my gosh, shocking. What?
Literally, people at the table that I was at were shocked. We're shocked that I said that. We could just, like, he could just help repair the ceiling. And that was so great. That was so great that he poked holes in the ceiling instead of hitting somebody with that broom.
Yeah. Is there anything that you want to turn the tables and ask me?
What would be helpful for you? Like if I came alongside and was working with your family, what would be the most help for you and your family? Not just for Owen, but for you and your whole family. Because that's what I'm always trying to get at. Like, yeah, I obviously love working with the kids and I do want to help them, but I want to uplift the entire family.
For us, and not that I've recorded the podcast piece of this yet, and parts of this but because I'll have a couple solo things before to fill this piece in, but for like I agree with you in terms of the diagnosis thing of being that sort of hang up. For us, because of the joke fiasco is a better word that we went through with with trying to get the thing over to Sunny Hill and stuff, clearing up everything with and sort of finally putting an answer on that. For me, it's like at least I sit there and go, okay, that sort of chapter is kind of closed. I have something, I know what we can at least call it. I don't know what my wife would say to this. I'm just going to speak for me. But at least knowing, okay, we are this, what other, and I think the other thing would be is, getting access to that funding, because, you know, even with the dyslexia thing, we were looking at programs and going, what Orton Gilliam or Gilligan or whatever the one is called.
Gillingham, yeah.
Yeah, Gillingham. Great. I'm just going to reference Gilligan's Island now. No one but you or me is going to sit there and realize that. Um, like it's expensive. Um, and I think that's certainly, those kind of things. It's expensive and it's time, and that one is massively time consuming, if I remember correctly. No one's got time for that sort of thing. Like, this is not reasonable. What do you got to do? Drive clear across town to sit there and get to some of these things? And that's one thing that bothers me more than anything is the distance that we need to drive as parents to these places. You've just come home from work, or you've had to take off the afternoon because you got to go to this 2 hour thing or 1 hour thing that you're supposed to be doing every single day, to sit there and help your kid learn to read or learn math or whatever. It's exhausting. It's those are sort of the things that act as the barriers for us to fully helping. But at the same time, will we help our way, we help them our way as well, and we're always working through something every day, and we're trying to make it fun and
Yeah.
be interested in it, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that he can't play. It doesn't matter that he can't play my bass. It matters that we've got a piano over there, and if he's got an idea or a music thing in his head, I'm totally going to take advantage of it and trying to make a song out of it. Right.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I do it with Mackenzie too. Those are the things that, like just filling in the gaps of those questions and then getting the help. And I just feel like, at least in my headspace, it's just getting that answer, because even when we went to Children's Hospital for the ADHD assessment thing that we went through a second time, like we had no idea about DCD, and when the OT gave him DCD, we're like, what
Yeah.
the hell is DCD? We got no clue whatsoever. Yeah. Anyways, things like that. That's kind of it. And for me, my own personal journey, it's working on myself and figuring out those things with me. I kind of want to put together that dyslexia piece, or dyscalculia in my case. The way that I do things in my head, especially with math and having being such a physical thing, is a weird thing to me. So that's my own sort of personal journey side of it as well. But yeah, so
Yeah.
there you go. Thank you for coming on. It
You
has
are
been
most welcome.
it has been a really, really wonderful conversation. If somebody wanted to reach out to you and contact you, where can they find you?
Probably my email, or they could text me. I never have any. I like give out my phone number all the time to all sorts of people all over the place.
I'll put that in the show notes so we can so we can always change it. It's not put on the video. Any final words?
This has been so much fun. I hope we keep doing this. Because we have not even cracked the surface of what you and I need to talk about.
No, we haven't.
Yeah,
No, not even close.
Because I have so many rants that I could do for you about what aggravates me in the system, how I see kids' needs not being met, how I see families' needs not being met.
Yeah. I hope my one hope, and I think we've done it, is I hope that the practicality side of things has come through, and we've done enough talking about strategies, words mattering as much as they do, but being able for people to walk away with those practical tools. And it's one thing to call them out. It's one thing to call out the inequities that we see, but what can we do to change it? Right. That's the thing, is how do we become better advocates at those things?
Yeah.
It's one of the hardest things to learn. It really is.
It is. And I think that we, in general, ask parents to be the best advocates, the people with the least amount of time and energy to actually put into it, right? Like I have time and energy to do it now. I'm also one step back from it, which makes it not as emotionally hard for me to do it.
Yeah.
Right. But when we first pulled Isaac from school, I don't know that I could have advocated. That was one of the reasons we pulled him, was because not so much that it was the easier route, because it wasn't, right? It wasn't the easier route, but I didn't have to put my time and energy into advocating when I could put my time and energy into my child. Yeah. So that was the trade-off there, right?
It was wonderful having this conversation. Thank you very much.
You are most welcome.
Thank you for listening to the We Are the ADHD Family podcast. If you want to be a guest on the podcast or know someone who would make a great guest, my contact information is in the show notes. This podcast is open to everyone. You don't need to be an expert, just passionate and want to see change. The opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are not associated with any employer or organization unless otherwise stated.
We are the ADHD family.